You can't claw someone in the eye. Eject her. Eject both of them. Eject both of them. Jacy Sheldon scratched her in the eye.
She was clawed in the face on live television and the refs did nothing. No ejection, no accountability, just silence. When Jacy Sheldon scratched Caitlin Clark across the eye, the replay told the story. No play on the ball, just pure contact with her face. Fans were stunned. Commentators were furious. And yet, the officials shrugged it off like it never happened. This wasn't just a dirty play, it was a symbol of a bigger problem. A growing narrative in the WNBA that Caitlin Clark doesn't get protection. And now, everyone's asking the same thing. What else will the league let slide? It started like any other physical possession until it turned into something far uglier. Caitlin Clark, the WNBA's most-watched rookie, had the ball in her left hand, driving hard, when Jacy Sheldon reached in. But this wasn't a swipe at the ball. It wasn't even close. Instead, Sheldon's hand clawed upward, scraping directly across Clark's face and into her eye. No ball, no play. Just fingers in her face, leaving Clark stunned, momentarily bent over in pain, while the crowd and cameras zeroed in on what had just happened. At first, there was disbelief. The refs didn't blow the whistle immediately, but the slow-motion replay didn't lie. It captured every frame, the angle of Sheldon's hand, the distance from the ball, the grimace on Clark's face as her head whipped back. Commentators watching live gasped. "That's not a basketball move," one said flatly. "That's straight contact to the eye." You could feel the energy shift in the arena. It wasn't just a foul that looked intentional. In real time, the play might have seemed fast and chaotic, but frame by frame, the truth was impossible to deny. Clark was dribbling on her left side, and Sheldon's hand came from the opposite direction, reaching across her body. There was no scenario where that kind of contact made sense, unless the goal was to interfere with Clark, not the basketball. This wasn't just physical defense, it was reckless. What made it worse? The refs reviewed it and still didn't eject anyone. That's when the tone changed from confusion to outrage. Fans erupted online. Commentators couldn't hide their frustration. Viewers at home were replaying the clip over and over, wondering how something so blatant could go unpunished. She clawed her in the eye. One tweet read, "Not even close to the ball. How is that not an ejection?" The angle, the contact, the aftermath, it all screamed one thing. This wasn't an accident. Whether fueled by frustration, intensity, or something else, Sheldon's move crossed a line. And yet, the game continued like nothing happened. No ejection, no apology, just silence. And that silence, it spoke louder than the foul itself. But that wasn't the only problem. The foul was outrageous, but the officiating response? Somehow, it was even worse. After Jacy Sheldon's fingers visibly raked across Caitlin Clark's eye, play stopped. The arena buzzed with confusion. Fans leaned forward. Commentators rewound the footage in disbelief. And the referees? They stood huddled, whispering among themselves like the cameras weren't capturing every angle in 4K, like millions weren't watching. What followed wasn't clarity, it was cowardice. 3 officials, Ginny Renault, Ashley Gloss, and Blanca Burns reviewed the play. They had access to every replay, every slow-motion zoom. They saw what we all saw. Jacy Sheldon's hand, nowhere near the ball, directly targeting Clark's face. They saw the impact. They saw Clark stumble, stunned, blinking through what could have been a corneal injury. And yet, after several minutes of review, the announcement came. Flagrant 1. No ejection, no suspension, nothing close to the accountability a play like that demanded. Commentators were speechless. One even asked aloud, "What do you have to do to get ejected in this league?" And it wasn't said as a joke, it was a genuine, frustrated question. Because this wasn't just about one missed call. It was about the message it sent. You can go for someone's face and you'll still stay in the game. Even worse, the reaction wasn't immediate. There was a long, dragging pause where it looked like the refs didn't even know what to call. And when they finally did, it felt like a compromise. A soft penalty, a "let's keep this under control" move, instead of an honest decision. But here's the thing, there's nothing controlled about letting a player get clawed in the eye with no consequences. The delay, the indecision, the lack of urgency, it all made the situation feel even more dangerous. Like they weren't just avoiding the hard choice, they were hoping it would blow over. That maybe people would forget. But no one forgot. Social media exploded. Players, fans, analysts, everyone was watching. Everyone saw the same thing, a dirty foul in a league that looked the other way. Even the most loyal WNBA defenders struggled to explain the logic. Because there wasn't any. Just silence. Just officials afraid to make the tough call when it mattered. And silence, in a moment like that, is louder than a whistle. It tells every player on the court that the rules are optional, that enforcement is selective, and that protection, it's not guaranteed even if you're the league's biggest star. And if you thought that was the end of it, think again. As if the eye rake wasn't enough, things exploded moments later when Marina Mebrey took matters into her own hands and Caitlin Clark got slammed to the floor. Still reeling from the scratch, Clark was moving through the paint when Mebrey barreled in, delivering a hard two-handed shove that sent her tumbling backward. This wasn't subtle. This wasn't incidental contact. It was a statement. And in an already volatile atmosphere, it blew the lid off the game. The crowd erupted not in cheers, but in disbelief. Boos rained down from the stands. The air crackled with tension. It wasn't just one player, no, it was two, both going after the league's biggest star within minutes of each other. You could feel the shift. This was no longer basketball. It was emotional warfare. Players rushed in, arms flailed. For a moment, it felt like a full-blown bench-clearing incident was brewing. You saw teammates stepping between bodies, coaches barking, referees suddenly scrambling to take control, the same officials who couldn't make the right call the first time. And at the center of it all, Clark, sitting on the hardwood, hands outstretched in confusion, frustration, and maybe even disbelief. She wasn't just being defended hard, she was being targeted. That much was clear. The mood changed instantly. The competitive fire was gone, replaced by a dangerous kind of edge, the kind where injuries happen. This wasn't physical play, it was personal. And whether the refs wanted to admit it or not, they let it get here. When Jacy Sheldon wasn't ejected, it gave the green light for escalation. And Mebrey took full advantage. Commentators were flabbergasted. Fans on social media called it open season on Clark. Even some former players chimed in, calling the sequence embarrassing and dangerous. Because this wasn't about missed calls anymore, it was about a pattern. A growing sense that certain players could go after Clark without fear of consequences. You could see it in the way the Liberty bench reacted, some cheering, others smirking. You could feel it in the Fever's body language, tense, angry, rattled. What was supposed to be a regular season game had turned into a cautionary tale. What happens when officials lose control? And here's the kicker: despite the chaos, the punishments were minimal. Just like with Sheldon, the league and officials treated Mebrey's hit like a bump in the road. There was no ejection, no league-wide message, no sign that anything would be done to prevent it from happening again. But the consequences? Practically non-existent.
You guys came for basketball.
Yeah,
Let's
no,
talk
seriously.
about basketball.
Yeah.
Come on now.
What do you think of just how you all were able to pull away in the second half, Caitlin, in
We're
particular?
going to the Commissioner Cup Championship.
Let's
That's
go!
pretty exciting. Y'all want to talk about that? Let's talk about that.
You don't need a magnifying glass to see what's going on here. The double standard in how Caitlin Clark is treated has been building for weeks, but this moment made it undeniable. When Jacy Sheldon clawed her in the eye, there was no ejection. When Marina Mebrey shoved her to the floor, there was no significant punishment. But ask yourself, if the roles were reversed, if Caitlin Clark had done either of those things to someone else, do you really think she would have been allowed to stay on the court? The answer is obvious. Caitlin Clark is not just any rookie. She's the face of a league desperately trying to stay relevant. She's filling arenas, driving viewership, and propping up merchandise sales by herself. And yet, when it comes to on-court protection, she's treated like an outsider, like an inconvenience. It's not just one incident, it's a trend. We've seen her shoved after plays, cheap-shotted off the ball, trash-talked and taunted, even by players who aren't even in the game. And time after time, officials either look away or downplay it as just physical basketball. But the same level of aggression toward other players, particularly veterans or stars, would result in flagrant fouls, suspensions, and statements from the league. So why is Caitlin Clark different? Some say it's because she's a rookie, others claim it's jealousy. But more and more fans are pointing to something harder to ignore: a resentment within the league. Clark didn't come up through the WNBA system. She arrived as a national phenomenon already bigger than the game. And for some, that's uncomfortable. What we're seeing now isn't just hard play, it's punishment for popularity. The league claims to support and uplift its stars, but when it matters most, when those stars need actual protection, it goes silent. Instead of stepping in, it lets the tension fester. And when fans speak up, they're dismissed as overreacting or told they just don't understand the game. But fans do understand. They know when something doesn't add up. They see the inconsistency in officiating. They hear the coded language in press conferences. And they feel the hostility directed at one of the few players bringing global attention to a struggling league. Because whether the WNBA wants to admit it or not, Caitlin Clark is being treated differently, and not in a good way. And when a player who's keeping the league afloat can't even get a flagrant foul call after getting clawed in the eye, something is broken. And the internet? It exploded. The moment Caitlin Clark got clawed in the face, the internet didn't just react, it erupted. Within minutes, the phrase, "eject her," started trending across social platforms. On X, TikTok, and Instagram, fans were demanding justice, accountability, and above answers. How could an eye gouge in broad daylight result in nothing more than a shrug from the officials? Clips of the incident flooded every corner of the internet. Slow-motion replays, zoomed-in screenshots, fan reactions, and edited montages showing Clark's face immediately after the scratch all went viral. And it wasn't just angry Fever fans chiming in. Analysts, ex-players, and even people who don't regularly follow the WNBA started weighing in. Some compared the missed call to the infamous non-call on LeBron James in the 2023 NBA season. Others pointed out the hypocrisy of how physicality is interpreted depending on who the player is. One former WNBA player tweeted, "This would never fly if the roles were reversed. Protect all players? More like protect everyone, except Caitlin Clark." That line became its own meme, plastered across thousands of posts, shared by big-name influencers and ESPN personalities alike. It wasn't just a wave of outrage, it was a full-blown digital firestorm. Even neutral fans, those who didn't watch the game live, were suddenly pulled into the conversation by the sheer volume of viral content. Reddit threads hit thousands of comments in hours. YouTube channels dropped instant reaction videos dissecting every angle of the scratch. TikToks racked up millions of views, showing Clark being scratched while the refs just stood by. And then came the satire. Memes comparing the WNBA refs to the three blind mice. Clips of Clark's eye scratch cut to WWE music. Fans reenacting the scene in streetball games, sarcastically yelling, "Just physical basketball," after fake fouls. What started as a heated moment in one game turned into a symbol of everything fans feel is wrong with the league, from inconsistent officiating to selective enforcement of rules, and the obvious failure to protect a star who's done more for the WNBA's visibility than any marketing campaign in decades. The message online was loud and unified. If this can happen to Caitlin Clark, it can happen to anyone. The league preaches equality, but fans saw favoritism. It talks about respect, but players who bring in millions in revenue can't even get a whistle. But this story isn't just about one game.
When the officials don't get control of the ball game, when they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game, it's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens.
What happened on that court wasn't just about Caitlin Clark. It wasn't just about a scratch or a missed call or even the failure to eject a player. It was about something bigger, something that cuts straight to the core of how the WNBA is viewed by its fans, its critics, and the next generation watching from the sidelines. At its heart, the WNBA is a league fighting for legitimacy. For years, it has struggled to draw mainstream attention, to earn the respect its athletes deserve, and to showcase a brand of basketball that rivals any professional sport. But moments like this, moments when clear, obvious violations are ignored, when referees seem afraid to uphold basic standards, chip away at that hard-earned credibility. What is the league saying when it allows a player to claw another in the face without a serious consequence? What message is it sending when retaliation goes virtually unpunished and no one in the arena is held accountable? To young girls watching, to the fans who just discovered the WNBA through Caitlin Clark's rise, this incident says, you're not protected. Not if you're popular, not if you're controversial, not even if the whole world saw what happened. That's dangerous. Because sports at their best teach discipline, fairness, and resilience. But when officials turn a blind eye to clear violations, they're teaching something else entirely, that rules are optional and justice is selective. And it doesn't stop there. The WNBA has built its brand on empowerment, equality, and strength. But when officials can't or won't enforce basic safety standards, it contradicts everything the league says it stands for. How can fans take the product seriously if the referees don't take their job seriously? How can young athletes look up to this league if their favorite stars are treated like they don't matter? Moments like this shape public perception, and that perception matters. For sponsors, for fans, for players deciding whether this league is where they want to build their future. If the WNBA wants to keep growing, if it wants to convert the millions of casual viewers into lifelong fans, it has to decide what kind of league it wants to be. One that protects its stars and stands for fairness? Or one that shrugs at dangerous play and lets chaos go unchecked? Because if this is the standard, then the WNBA isn't just risking its reputation, it's rewriting it. And not in a good way. A star player was clawed in the face on national television. No ejection, no accountability. Just silence from the league that claims to protect its own. The refs watched, the crowd erupted, the internet exploded, and yet no real consequences. So here's the question. How far does it have to go before someone finally steps in? How much more does a player have to endure before safety becomes a priority instead of a talking point? Because if this is what the WNBA allows, what happens next time someone gets hurt? And will anyone in charge be brave enough to stop it?